Krystle Kaul is an Asian American and an owner of a defense tech firm. She is vying for Congress in Virginia's 10th Congressional District, joining 11 Democratic candidates and 4 Republicans. The Democratic primary election for this race has become one of the most contested across Virginia since the incumbent Democratic Representative Jennifer Waxton announced her retirement due to health concerns last September. While most frontrunners in this race are former or current Virginia state legislators, Kaul, a political newcomer, has raised over $1 million, making her one of the top fundraisers in the race. Half of Kaul's campaign money comes from her own fortune. She is investing heavily in herself to become the first ever Congresswoman from the Asian American and Pacific Islander community to represent Virginia's 10th Congressional District on Capitol Hill. Yuan Media conducted an exclusive interview with Kaul discussing her candidacy.
I am not an elected official or a prior elected official, therefore I came in with no donor base. So I gave myself some seed money to hit the ground running. I believe strongly in putting your money where your mouth is. If I'm asking people to invest in me, I wanted to first invest in myself. I am not a millionaire, which some people have asked. So yes, I did put in money which I worked hard for over the past several years, and I believe strongly in democracy and upholding it, and I'm really proud of the fact that I was able to raise, more than many elected officials in this race. And coming in as a first-time candidate with no donor base, having never run for any office before, I think I've really impressed many people across the party and across the country. I had an intrinsic desire to run for Congress more than 2 decades ago, actually, when I was starting from a teenager. I didn't see anyone that looked like me in Congress. So it was very difficult for people in your community to imagine that this is a viable path. And I would argue, well, if you don't see a path, you have to blaze that trail. So I did a bachelor's degree in international relations, a certificate study in women in politics. I actually was working on Capitol Hill for Congressman Marty Meehan from Massachusetts. He's a Democrat. Did my master's in international relations, went on to Brown University where I got a master's in political science, part of a PhD program. And this area needs a strong leader to come in, and I am the only woman from Loudoun County who is running in this race. And Loudoun County here has a majority of the population. My grandfather immigrated to this country. My family's Indian American. He gave my family a very good life. He pursued the American dream, and I want to be able to give that back here to VA 10. Yes, I have 3 top priorities. So the first is to fight against MAGA extremists, which I've demonstrated in my resignation under President Trump. So I was working with the Department of Defense, which is by nature a very apolitical environment. There were several very senior political appointees placed in agencies that were spreading a type of ideology that I just didn't agree with. I'm a very staunch women's rights advocate. I used to work with Yuan Women. I think that women often get overlooked, even though we are about 52% of the population, we're still considered a minority and we don't have our voices heard. So the first thing I'd want to do is codify Roe v. Wade. I want to protect women's reproductive health freedoms, protect our right to abortion, and gun safety. So I personally bore witness to 4 people getting murdered down in front of me as I sought cover. I've lived in different conflict zones, including Kashmir. I've seen the effects of gun violence, and I come back to the United States and I see here that we have very loose gun laws, which is also disturbing for me as well to see. Congress needs more young voices, those who have real-world policy experience. And I think that if we look at our makeup of our Congress today, we have many teachers, businessmen and women, doctors, industry professionals. I think there's many paths to Congress. There's not just one. And I argue that Congress is only made stronger with a more versatile makeup of it. Not being a delegate or state senator, I don't think hurts me anyway. I think I come in with a fresh perspective. I believe strongly in very Asian values. For example, education, immigrant hustle, as they call it, right? Hardworking, making sure you have a lot of discipline, making sure you study hard, you work hard. That really comes from the family environment that I grew up in, and this pursuit of the American dream. And I think that I want to come in and to show that we can have representation for the AAPI community, which we definitely need. The AAPI community is very successful nationwide, academically, across many professions and industries. However, politically, we are extremely underrepresented, and that goes for the entire AAPI community. It's time that we have a voice. We need representation. We need to stand up on issues that are of concern for our particular community, and you also need to inspire the next generation. I think it's important for young people to see faces of those that represent them from the AAPI community, to know that it's a viable path. It's one that is critical and important, and that they can pursue. When you don't see representation, it's very hard to imagine yourself in that kind of position. As I said, my inspiration for running came very intrinsically from a young age, without having role models. I didn't have any members of Congress I could look at, and I think now we see 5, and we see more and more Asians coming in. Again, I still think in small numbers. For the AAPI community, we are still extremely underrepresented. We should have a lot more representatives than we do now. So I think that that's something that we, as a community, need to really encourage. I do believe it starts with the family unit. It starts at a very young age. It's important to put those values into young children when they're in high school, when they're going to university, to say that going into political science, international relations, to going into the field of politics is one that's very noble and one that's very much needed. And I think that's going to start with parent encouragement to do that, and the community's encouragement to do that. I want to acknowledge discrimination that occurs in schools against Asian American students. I myself faced discrimination. I did not receive much support, from school administrators. I know it still occurs today. I have talked with students across Virginia who are Asian American, whether Indian American, Chinese American, mixed, for example, and they face it. Bullying is still very prevalent in Virginia and around the country. There are many issues that I've seen in regards to equity. For example, the Thomas Jefferson School case. We need to really protect children, those who are very qualified, to be able to enter and to give them that fair right and access to that education. And so I think that it still occurs at many private schools, at boarding schools, and at the university level, of course, where you do see many Asian Americans not getting admission because they're getting hurt by the fact that they're Asian American. And this happens especially Asian Americans in urban centers, and especially with so many Asian Americans outperforming. I think that we do need to have reform. It's important that we have members of Congress who constituents can turn to and say, we need you to address these issues that are for our community. And there's also an emotional sentiment that exists there.
Kaul is not the only AAPI candidate in this race. Another Indian American, a Pakistani American, and a Nepali American candidate are also running for the same seat, reflecting the high diversity in this district. I'm Ping Ping Yin together with Le Chen Li for Yuan Media.